Most photographs will come in a little flat because cameras are designed to capture them that way to make sure that there's detail in both the shadow and the highlights. Now, if you're shooting on an overcast day or in shade or in a backlit situation, typically the image is going to be very flat. And remember, flat means it's missing either white tones or black tones or both. So looking at this image, you have to train your eye to see this because our eyes auto calibrate. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a black and white adjustment layer right up here, but I'm going to do nothing. And then I'm going to add a levels adjustment layer. I'm going to pull this bar down so I can see it. And look at this histogram. I'm missing all black tones and all the dark gray tones. I'm also missing all white tones and most of the highlight areas. I do have this one little pixel all the way across, but I am missing a little bit right here. Generally, the quickest fix is just make the black points go to the base of the mountain. Notice that midtone reshifted, and now it's reshifting again. The midtone always recalibrates to the center, equal distance between the blacks and the white point. So after you drag this to the base of the mountain, just drag this middle one to taste, depending on what's going on in your image. So if you want it a little brighter in the midtones, or you want it a little darker and moodier in the midtones, like you kind of get to decide that. But always know that your goal is to have a full range of tones from black to white, and then you kind of set the mood with this midtone slider. I'm going to click off the levels dialog box so you can see the before. See how flat that looks now that you've seen it corrected? So this definitely has more dramatic impact and punch. So with this image, I wanted to demonstrate how you can manipulate the local and global subject contrast with your black and white conversions. So what I'll do is I'll add a black and white adjustment layer, but I won't do anything. And you can kind of see, let me turn that off for a second. See how the background's kind of orangey? The buildings are very orangey, and then the car's red, and the cobblestones have like a warm tone. So when you convert it, they're all going to be very similar shades of gray, and nothing's going to stand out. I'm going to have a levels adjustment layer just so you can see it. So there again, notice that we have no black tones, no pure black anywhere. So there's nothing here, there's nothing over here, and there's not a lot of highlight or midtones. It's mostly in the darker area. It looks like this was shot in the shade, right? In the shade of all these buildings. So what I'll do is I'll turn off that levels adjustment layer for now. I'm going to toggle back on the black and white. And remember, it should always show up in the properties panel. And again, anything you're not seeing, you know how to find it in Windows. Just, see, that's all I've got showing. Adjustments, layers, and properties. Adjustments, properties, and layers. See that? All right. So we know that this was ready in orange. So let me pull that up. Reds, pull up the yellows, pull up the reds a little more because that car was red. So I want to really make that more red. I'm going to see if any of the others, okay, that puts a little black tones in the back. Not really a lot going on there. I'll leave that. Okay, I can get a little bit of darkness because remember the cobblestones were a little warm. So there you go. With some very quick adjustments, I've given this a very localized contrast. Now, if I'm blowing something out, because I feel like I might be like right here. What is that? Okay, so here we would need to decide, do we want to select and adjust the beetle with a selection? But I don't think we need to. I think we can just let it go just a little bright. And if we see something that's a little too bright, remember, if you hit Command, Option, Shift, letter E, squish it to the top, and then go in and do old school dodging and burning. Dodging lightens things, burning, darkens things. And you get to choose. Do you want to darken shadows, midtones, or highlights? I'm going to do highlights at about 11% because I just feel like it's a little too bright. Now, be careful not to get it muddy. Try not to use more than about 11%. See how I'm taking away that uber bright area that was up here? The focus is going to be the car. There we go. I feel like that's a great place to stop. So again, where were we? We went from, let me just do this, add a blank, unmanipulated black and white. So we went from here to here. Notice the difference? much more dynamic image. Typically, that extra contrast always makes an image better. This one is a great example of how you can push an image really any direction that aligns best with your creative intent. So what I'm going to do is just add a black and white adjustment layer, and that's the straight neutral conversion. I mean, they're very similar, right? So I want to make them a little different. So if I want to make that sky dark, which was a blue sky, so let me drag the blue slider down. Maybe I'll bring the cyan down, and see, I have to bring it so far down because I'm getting posterization in here, right? See that posterization? So I've got to camouflage that. This is a good chance just to make it go super dark. And was this a red wall? Yeah, it was. So I can pull this up a touch. So I now have this really high contrast scene. I can put some graphic type up here, if this is a 2-page spread for a magazine article. So make sure you save out this version. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another black and white adjustment layer. I'm going to turn off this one, the first one we did. And now I want to do the opposite. I want to make that sky bright. And I've got to kind of, again, camouflage that posterization. So I've got to kind of blow out both the cyans and the blues. And then I'm going to make that red brick darker. Something like that. If something starts to get a little muddy when you're doing this, just add a levels adjustment layer. And well, there you go. We can see what's going on, right? So yeah, the whites are 100% clipped, which we knew because we did that to the sky. And then all the rest of the tones are shifted to the dark area. We need to rebalance that. So now I can just pull up the whites, but pull in the darks, figure out where that mid-tone should be. And there we go. Just save that out. So that's a nice complement to what we were doing, which was this one, right? Now we have this one. So make sure you display both of those. Now let's go back and just take a quick peek of what a straight hue-sat desaturation is. So I'm going to duplicate it, Command-Shift-U. So yeah, that's the most neutral, averaged conversion. And again, notice it's all midtones. Here with this conversion, there's no highlights at all. Very few light tones, and that's why it just looks so gray and muted. So that's why you're making these conversions, so that you're choosing what it is you want to make look great in your black and white conversions. So this would be the same deal. If I were to add a hue saturation adjustment layer and just drag the saturation down, which again is the worst way to convert something to black and white because it neutralizes all your color channels. And notice how it converts it. It's very flat. If I hit Command L to bring up the levels dialog box, well, it's not going to work if I'm not on the image. Let me push all that to the top layer. Hit Command L. So look at that. Mostly dark tones, some dark to mid tones, and hardly any bright areas. We do have this little bit around here, and no highlights or white tones at all. So let me delete that, delete that. I'm just going to add a black and white adjustment layer. And here we want to make the bird brighter. So it's a red bird, so I'll grab the red. I'll try out the yellow. That's nice. Is there blue anywhere? Oh, look, there's some blue, probably from reflected shadow light, lighting this shadow area of the bird. So I'm going to drag that blue up. I want to push the green down. So I'm going to pull the green down. See how the background goes down a little bit? That's just going to give me some really quick adjustment. And the key is you just got to figure out how to make it bright, but not like blown out. Like I don't want to lose all my highlight details. You need to master this. Like for example, if you're shooting a wedding and the bride pays, hundreds or thousands of dollars for a dress, she doesn't want to miss all the little lace and little, white beads. You've got to retain highlight detail. So here I've blown it out. Do you see that? And then, okay, now I still have my highlight detail, but it's still bright. So I'm going to leave it somewhere around there. Okay, with this image, well, let's just do that basic conversion. I'm going to hit Command or Control J to duplicate the layer. I'll hit Command Shift U, which is the keyboard shortcut for automatically desaturating an image, which again is the worst way to do it. If I hit Command or Control L, and the only reason I do this is just because it's quick, it's going to bring up my levels dialog box. Now remember, I don't want to apply this because this is not a levels adjustment. This is the destructive one, but it gives me a quick histogram so I can see it's pretty much what I thought, right? This is a flat image. Remember, flat's missing white or black or both. And here I knew this was missing whites, and we can see the science is there. It's telling us there are no pure whites. There are no bright white tones. They don't even start till right here. So you can, yes, still bring this over a touch, right? And kind of adjust this like that, and that looks way better than it did. But let me show you a new way. I'm going to hit the gradient map icon, this one right here, and it typically will do an automatic beautiful conversion of black and white. Now, it didn't that time. Why? Did you notice? Let me go back. Do you see this? This was not set to default. So let me set those to default by clicking on that black and white square, and let's try it again. There we go. So that's kind of what we want. One quick thing. Let me hit delete again. What happens if this came in reversed for some reason and you hit this? So everything is reversed in tone, because again, having black in your foreground, white in your background before you click the gradient map is going to make it easy. But if it's reversed, it's no big deal. Just click reverse right here in the properties panel and it goes right back to the normal. I want you to click on this gradient and it will launch the gradient editor. And when it does, I want to add a midpoint like right here, and that's quite bright, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on color, and we know up in this corner is pure white, down in this corner is pure black. So I'm just going to click somewhere in between, right? So look at my RGB values. We know 128 is half of 256. So I just need to be in that ballpark. I'll stop there at 127. So now I have a gray point slider. This will let me lower the gray point or make the grays a little brighter. So I have some choice. And then I can even micro adjust here if I want. So experiment with playing with this gradient adjustment, because it can create some really immediate and powerful things. Now, looking at this, so what I do is for the next minute and 40 seconds is go down a path that's very logical, but I end up at a result that I don't like. Now, the reason I'm leaving it in the video is because I want you to see that all images are a visual problem-solving process. There is no concrete recipe, and you basically have to explore, and the more you explore, the more experience you get, and the better decisions you make, and the quicker you'll arrive at the solutions that you want. Now, this path I go down is very logical, but it just pushes the image and overworks it to a state that doesn't look good, and I'll talk about that. So basically, the next fuzzy scene you see appear after this one right here, it's going to start back at this point. Let me push it to its own layer, Command, Option, Shift, letter E. I'll hit Command L again. Well, there we go. I still don't have a pure white. So I'm going to drag that to here, pull that mid-tone down just a touch, click OK. Now look, after you've done all your adjustments, where does your eye go? My eye goes to this wall and this jacket, because unfortunately they're the brighter parts of the image. So you still need to fine tune things. So here I think I'd like to dodge, maybe go to the dodge tool, and I'm going to dodge midtones and maybe drag this to 25%, make a big brush. Now I'm just do a couple of clicks on the guy's face because I want our attention to really go there. And then actually maybe while we're here, let's go ahead and fine tune it more. Hit the burn tool. I'll get down to midtones and I'll tap 2 for 20%. So it'll auto populate that, make a bigger brush with the right bracket key. And I'm just going to kind of do some nice subtle passes, couple of clicks for maybe get rid of this highlight spot up here. So you see it is such a balance of trying to get, it's really hard to get a nice black and white where you don't have, I'm doing lots of clicks, pulling that jacket back down. Now I'm going to see, should I bring that face back up a little bit? Bring this whole area up a little bit? See, now I feel like I've bled out the tones. Like he has a super high contrast face where I'm starting to lose detail and it just looks odd. If you get to this point, again, this is Photoshop. Just back up. Let's do it again. Add a levels adjustment layer. Pull this over. Maybe I just overworked it. So let me pull everything down.
Nice.
So yeah, there's some nice relating contrast. He's definitely too dark. Command Option Shift letter E. And this time I'll hit Command or Control J to try it a different way. And then I'll choose Screen Blend Mode. Okay, I like his face in that one, but I don't like anything else. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a layer mask right here. And I'm going to hit Command or Control I to invert it. So I've hidden everything. I want to tap B for brush. And white's already in my foreground. If yours isn't, just hit X if you have black and white, because remember, X swaps them back and forth. Have a big brush, and I'm just going to click once on his face. Oops, I'm still on the dodge tool. I need to be on the brush tool. Click, click. And you see over here, I option clicked on the mask so you can see it. So do you see how this kind of lighter dodged out area Remember, black conceals, white reveals, and gray reveals a little. So I'll click on the eyeball to see again. So I'm going to click again. Oh, I'm only painting at 20%. How about I go 60%? Bigger jumps. See how this over here, see how this is getting wider and wider? And I'm liking where it's going. I'll make a smaller one, and I'm going to go to 90% and just kind of do a harder circle around his face. That may have been too hard over here, so I hit Command or Control Z. Do you see how it's really, I'm going to hit 8 for 80%. It's really a craft. Like, you have to really kind of do it in a way that has a nice balance. Compress all that to its own layer, Command Option Shift letter E. So you've probably noticed I do this Command Option Shift letter E trick a lot, and it's because I want to compress everything I've done to just a single layer to continue working. And let's go back and hide some stuff. I'll click on that layer, I'll click on this layer, hit Command G to group it, turn it off. So this was the straight gradient map, right? His face only looks really flat. This area looks really good. This area looks really good. But we created this image. Let's see where that is. Command L to bring up. Look at that. So we have a histogram with stretch tones all the way across. It does say that I'm running up against the wall and losing black tones, and I am, but I'm okay with that. I'm okay with letting the shadows fall into pure black if they're adding a graphic element to the image. Like right here is fine, total black here, shirt's totally black. Like I think this is perfectly acceptable to clip some tones. Now, what am I clipping here? If you need to see what you're clipping, just hold down the Alt or Option key and click on that highlight. All right, so it looks like I'm getting some clipped pure white in the jacket, kind of little speckles everywhere. To pull that down, all you'd have to do is grab this output slider and pull it down and reset by 3 points. So now let's click up here. See, that came in a lot better, but it's not as graphic as it was before. Although I think this looks great. It's a good place to stop. Okay, we know how to do gradient map. I'll make Command or Control 0 to fill the screen. I'll add a gradient map. Looks like things are reversed, so I'll just click the reverse. And let me click on that gradient editor so I can, remember, I'm not going to click inside here. I'm going to pull just down and click right here. And it came in as white. Look what it immediately did. It blew out the entire background, but I do have nice foreground now, right? So I sort of like that. So I like everything that's doing. So I'm going to click OK. But then I'm going to be like, wait a minute. We forgot to do something. So if I were to add a black and white adjustment layer, see how it's very flat. If I push that all to its own layer, so I could bring up the histogram by hitting Command or Control L. All right, look at that. I've got no black tones, right? High spike in dark tones, virtually no midtones, and then just a bunch of light grays, and then no highlight or super light grays. So again, this is a flat image. So let me get rid of that, because we're doing all this with the gradient map. But I'm going to need to separate my foreground element from my background element. So what I'm going to do, and this is a great way to do it, is turn off my gradient map, and let's go back to the original color background image. And I'll do select subject and see if it does any better. It didn't do better at all.
This sucks more than anything that I've ever sucked before.
Hit Command D to deselect. So what are we going to do? We're just going to use that quick selection tool. Slightly bigger brush. There we go. It looks like it got all of this, but it's also including the mountain back here in these two areas. Pull it across. Got all of this, but again, it's still getting the mountain here, and it did not get the lady. So I'm going to make my brush smaller with the left bracket key. Click once there. Click her back. And it looks like I got most everything except for, right in here. So now what do I do? Well, I'm going to hold down the Alt or Option key and click. It's like, don't get that. 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 Don't get this little thing up here. Make my brush even smaller. Click. Okay, it looks like it did a good job. And don't get in between her ankles and calves. All right, so now it looks like we have a good general selection. Always double check it by going up to the Select and Mask. And then to show you the things that's not going well, I'm on the Refine Edge brush, right? So I'm just going to make my brush a little smaller, and I'm going to paint over that pink area. I'm going to do a little click where that's white. Do a tiny little click where that is white. Maybe where that little white spot is. It looks like I've got some problems in between her arms, and in between here, and in between here. So now I've really created a really fine-tuned mask. Now I'm going to zoom in a bit. Make sure I didn't over-select her arms, which sometimes this will do. I'll left right key to make that brush a little smaller. I'll hold down the option key to make this minus and say, make sure you are getting the arm. Good. Make sure you're getting this hand over here. Good. But again, get rid of this little area. All right, so that's close enough for government work. Command and Control 0. If this were a magazine spread, we'd be doing a lot more. I'm leaving the radius at around 3 pixels. Smoothing, that's a little high. Take that down to 3. Feather, probably going to take that down to less than a pixel, maybe half a pixel. And I'm going to output this new layer with layer mask. Click OK. So what do I have? Now I have a selected foreground and subject that I like that gradient map on, right? But I need to bring back this one. But this gradient map up here is affecting everything. So remember, you need to clip this gradient map to just this foreground selection. So I'm going to hover between here and hold down the Alt or Option key and click. So now I have this great black and white foreground that has some nice contrast, but I need the background to be black and white as well. So what I'm going to do is come back down here, and I'm just going to add a hue saturation layer, pull it down, because I think I like the way that's going, a nice kind of flat in contrast with what's going on with the dynamic range here in the front. If we need a little bit of mixing and matching, we know how to do that, right? I'm going to go to the very top, hit Command, Option, Shift, letter E, because I love to go over to Camera Raw Filter, which we're about to get into, because that's a really powerful version of all of this, because now I have a little bit of clarity I can pump up. I can check my exposure, so I can pull that down just a touch, but then I can bring up my shadows that I just made too dark. See that? I can pull the dehaze a little bit. So you have a lot of options, but I think anywhere in here is a nice range. Click OK, because again, let me select, and put it in its own group, turn off the eyeball. So this is a straight desaturate, unexciting conversion. And here we are, we've given a lot more excitement to the foreground. Now, if I were to argue anything, turning this on and off, I'd say I love what we've done with the architecture. I feel like the woman is a little too bright in the highlights right here. So actually, I would probably add a mask on the very top right here. Hit B for the brush, hit D for default colors, and then make sure black's in the foreground by tapping X. And then I would make my brush a little bigger. Again, I need to be on the B for the brush tool. B for the brush tool. Okay, I need to make my brush a little smaller because I just want to do 80%. That's a little high. Let me drag that down to 40-some% because I basically just want to pull out. See, even that was a touch too much. Maybe tap 3 for 30%. See that? Because I'm being drawn right to this little blown out highlights of her shirt. And I don't think that's normal. So I'm actually pull this all over her and then maybe one little click on the shoulder again. Okay, that seems like she fits in within this scene. Again, you have to pay attention to all these little things because those are the things that a viewer's eye will catch. And they may not understand why it looks wrong, but they'll say, oh, something's wrong about this. But here's a good place to stop. Okay, here's a night sky, and again, unless you're doing light painting, your foreground's always going to be pretty dark and flat. So if I were to duplicate this and hit Command Shift U for the desaturation, hit Command L, well, that's what we'd expect. Pure black somewhere, right? If I Option click on it, I can see where the black areas are. See those pure black areas there? If I Option click on this, I've just got a couple of star specks, right? And then I've got more stars all throughout here. But no balance of tones in the foreground, right? See how that's just totally blackness down there? I'll leave that, but I'll turn off that layer. And I'm just going to add a gradient map and hit reverse. Looks like I need to click on this. Now, if you get an adjustment like you don't like, wow, that's way too hard, remember, just click on the color, choose a midtone, like around 128 in the RGB channels, and now drag the midtone slider to the direction you want to make brighter. Like I want to make that sky just a little brighter, right? That's too bright. It's looking a little flat. So it's somewhere in there for the sky. Now the foreground is still very muddy, very flat. So what I'm going to do for that is I'm going to add a levels adjustment layer. And look at that, way over here. I'm just going to pull that all the way over, and I'm going to open my midtones. Now what am I looking at? I'm ruining the sky. And that looks ridiculous. It looks like an illustration. I'm just trying to get some, just some subtle, brighter tones on this snowscape, even though it's nighttime. Something like that. And remember, this is all relative. This is going to look way brighter once we make this sky back darker. I'm already on a layer mask, right? So if I hit the gradient tool, and if yours doesn't go from black to white, just click on it, click on basics, and choose black to white. Looks like either of these would work. Click OK. And then I'm just going to say, I'm going to start here and drag to there. So it's fully applied from where I started, and it graduates the apply all the way to here. So actually I want to pull down into my mountains a little bit. I don't mind if the back one's silhouette a little, because I want to make sure I don't lose my detail in the sky. And see how I keep doing it. See here, I didn't do it quite right, because I'm trying to match the sky with this mountain range. And see if I pull all the way over, it makes all this dark. So a short pull is a very quick transition. A long pull is a very gradual transition. I think right in there is where I like it. Command 0 to fit back in screen. Command Option Shift letter E to put up to its own layer. And because I love it, I'm going to pop over to the camera raw filter and just with a little bit of clarity, make that nice. But I want to open up my shadow details, my exposure, but not blow out my highlights. Yeah, I feel like somewhere in here is nice. Click OK. So again, where were we? I'm going to option click on this neutral desaturated black and white because that'll turn off all the other eyeballs. We went from here to here, here to here. Now what do you see? What I see is I do like the foreground. Maybe I went too far though. And I don't like how bright the sky is. So now I need an in-between. So what do? What we can do is we can take this layer, click on it, and drag it all the way to the top, on top of our layer, turn it on, turn it back off. And like, what do I need to do? I just need to paint in a little bit. So I'm turn it on, add a layer mask, hit B for the brush, bigger bracket key, and I'm on a white mask. So I just need to be painting with black. And I'm on 30%, maybe at 5 for 50%, just because I want to bring 50% of that brightness back because I went too far. And then I'll click one more time in paint, bring this back 50% more of that 50%. Maybe I'll do a little pass right through here just to make this nebula a little brighter. And I'm going to call that good to go. Command Option Shift E, push all to the top. I think this is a great place to stop. It's a nice range of tones. All right away, I'm going to get rid of this moon up here. I'll use the spot healing brush tool, make my brush just a little bigger than the spot, and there we go. So that distracting element is out of the sky now. I'm going to add a black and white adjustment layer. Looks like this is a backlit, so obviously this is going to be real muddy, right? If I hit Command Option Shift letter E to put it on its own layer and hit Command L, we're going to see that I have no white tones, no whites and no white tones at all, right? Ton of black tones, which we can see, and a ton of tones between the mid and halfway through to the highlight, but no real good mid tones either. I'm going to leave that just so we can come back to it to look at it, but I'm going to turn it off so it doesn't get distracting. So I'm on this black and white layer. I'm going to click on this little icon to make sure that it loads in the properties area. So I have a black and white color adjuster, right? We know that skin tones are red and yellow for this, or actually for pretty much all humans. Red and yellow adjusts the skin color brightness. So pull. So I can pull her way up just so that she sticks out. But this is a little dark, right? So I'm going to have to do something to that. So I add a levels adjustment layer and see overall it's still flat. So if I pull this up and pull this a little brighter, got to be careful because I'm going to get, posterization and noise. That's what happens when you try to brighten up something that's severely underexposed. So this is going to need to be a balance. And what does that look like? Okay, it looks bad on her. I don't even think it looks good on the water. So I'm just going to hit delete twice to delete that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to Command Option Shift letter E to squish everything to its own layer that's open and active. It didn't do anything with the layer that was turned off. And this is going to be a dodge and burn thing. I'm going to dodge my midtones. Maybe 25%. I just want to make this little area a little brighter. Maybe I'll hit 7 for 70% just to really kind of bring this out just a touch. Maybe I'll do one click on her face, on that side of her face. And I think that's plenty. So here's where we were, and here's what we did. We just gave her a little bit more contrast, brightened up the area of the water, and I think this is a good place to stop. Okay, this is the last one, and we're going to do all of it in Camera Raw. I'm going to click Filter and go to Camera Raw Filter. So what do? There's a black and white button up here. Just click it. Look at the histogram. No black or dark tones, no solid midtones, and no whites or highlights, right? This is a really, really flat image. We need to make some adjustments. And what do we need to adjust? Well, let's adjust the clarity. Remember, clarity bumps up the midtone contrast. So that's a good place to start. But I'm gonna have to bring up that exposure. And I'm getting posterization in here, and I don't know that it's okay. I mean, this is an okay shot, but I think we can make it more visually exciting. Let's pull those blacks down to make the black areas. I'll pull the dehaze up because that's a good way to get some contrast in quick black areas. So we're going to silhouette the subject, right? That looks nice. Maybe open up the shadow area, pull down the blacks, pull up the texture, pull up the exposure a touch, pull up the dehaze again. Nope, I should pull down my blacks. Open up the shadows. I think this is a kind of an exciting interpretation of this scene. I'm gonna click OK. And unfortunately, I didn't duplicate my layer, so I can't go back and see how flat it was. But let me show you a trick. If you ever do that, all you have to do is hit Command or Control Z, because everything we did, even though we did a ton of stuff in Adobe Camera Raw, it's all just a single step. So if I hit Command or Control Z, it's going to step back one step. Now I can hit Command J to duplicate the layer, right? I can go right back up to Filter. And remember, Camera Raw filter's here. But your filter menu will always remember the very last filter you applied and all the multiple settings inside that filter that you changed. So if I just click the very top Camera Raw filter, it's going to reapply everything we did so we don't lose all that work. Bang, bang, baby! So I can turn that off, come back to this one, add a hue sat layer, drag down the saturation. I'll push all of that to its own layer, hit Command or Control L, and we see the exact same histogram that we saw in Adobe Camera Raw. There are no white tones, light tones, midtones are missing. Like, this is a flat image. It's missing whites and blacks, and it's missing a weird distribution of the midtones. So what we did is we took this image, which would be a straight AI type conversion, and we interpreted the scene. That's what I encourage you to do. Interpret your scenes to have a wide range of tones from full white to full black. Let's see where we are. Command or Control L. So look, we've clipped the black, which we knew we did, right, for the graphic reasons. And we can even pull that up more if we want to see what that looks like. See how white goes all the way over, just a teeniest bit over here. So we don't need to pull that to the base of the mountain. That's just going to brighten that center area. And again, this is the midtones. So again, you can make your, like a quick adjust, like, ooh, maybe I would like the midtone just a tiny bit brighter. And then I'll leave this here. Click OK. But again, we went from a very flat interpretation to an exciting image that's pretty dramatic and has some rich contrast. Great place to stop. Hey, if you like this video and it helps, you can help me. Smack it, whack it, and crack-a-lack it. Take care. I like subscribers.
That's awesome! Whoa! Yes! Oh my god, I did! This is...
Hey, you stayed to the end. You know what that means? You're awesome. I'm talking about you. Now get out of here.